Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video and leaving meaningful comments. Wishing everyone good health and happiness. In the early morning, Chung woke up in his small, dim house, his body aching as if every bone had been shattered. Last night, two strange men had ambushed him, stealing his wallet and old phone without mercy. They hadn't stopped there, they cruelly shoved him into a dark, freezing lake. Now, with every breath, his chest tightened painfully, as if someone were squeezing it. He struggled to open his eyes, faint light slipping through the crack in the door, illuminating his hollowed face. He reached to touch his shoulder, where dark bruises stood out starkly against his skin, stinging at the slightest pressure. The pain radiated down his legs, forcing him to grit his teeth as he tried to sit up. But even that small movement left him gasping, sweat rolling down his forehead. He collapsed back onto the cold floor, his trembling hands clutching his chest. Lying there, motionless, he stared at the stained ceiling, his heart heavy with helplessness and shame. At the same time, I opened my eyes inside the bamboo shelter beneath the mountain nook, sunlight filtering through the gaps in the leaves onto my face. The sound of birds chirping echoed faintly, blending with the rustle of wind through the treetops. I sat up, my bare feet numb against the damp, chilly ground. The thin, tattered shirt hung loosely on a bamboo branch. I slipped it on. My stomach growled loudly, hunger clawing at me after a long night with nothing but the mountain wind for company. I decided to head down to the village to find work, grabbing the small knife and stepping out of the shelter. The trail was rugged, littered with sharp pebbles that scraped my bare feet. The sun rose higher, its harsh rays making sweat soak through my back. I passed thorny bushes, dry twigs snapping underfoot with a crack. Finally, I reached the village, where ramshackle houses dotted the valley below. I approached a small roadside eatery, the smell of hot rice and fish sauce wafting from the makeshift kitchen. The owner, a stern middle-aged man, sat smoking out front. Hesitantly, I tapped on the wooden frame, my voice soft as I asked to wash dishes and clean for some money. He scrutinized me from head to toe, his eyes probing, then nodded and pointed to a pile of dirty dishes stacked by a basin. Relieved, I rolled up my sleeves and got to work without delay. The cold water bit into my hands, aggravating the calluses, but I ignored it. The clatter of dishes rang out steadily, drowning the growling of my empty stomach. I scrubbed each bowl, grease slipping away, leaving the porcelain gleaming white. Water splashed onto my shirt, soaking my shoulders, but I kept going, relentless. Once the dishes were done, I grabbed a broom, sweeping the greasy floor and wiping down the stained wooden tables. The owner watched, arms crossed, then nodded approvingly as I finished. He dug into his pocket, pulled out a few crumpled bills, and pressed them into my hand without a word. I clutched the money tightly, a wave of relief washing over me, as if a burden had lifted. I hurried to a nearby general store, its dusty shelves lined with odds and ends. There, I bought a small aluminum pot, a few packets of instant noodles, and an old but sharp knife. Back at the shelter, I set my purchases down, sweat still beading on my forehead, my breath heavy from the long trek. I took the knife and cut a long bamboo stalk, hollowing it out to make a water container. The path to the stream wasn't far, but steep. I stepped carefully to avoid slipping. The stream ran clear, gurgling over moss-covered rocks like a soothing melody. I bent down, filling the bamboo tube with water, the cold seeping into my hands. My shoulders sagged under the weight as I carried the water back, each step pressing deep into the soft earth. Once there, I poured it into the pot, my hands trembling from exhaustion, and gathered dry twigs to start a fire. The flames sprang to life, crackling as smoke curled upward into the damp air. I dropped a packet of noodles into the pot, the spicy aroma rising, cutting through the mountain chill. The water bubbled furiously, the noodles softening as I stirred them with a dry bamboo stick. When the noodles were ready, I lifted the pot from the fire and sat in front of the shelter, steam warming my face. I slurped a spoonful of broth, the heat and spice tingling my tongue, comforting in its simplicity. I ate slowly, each bite sliding down my parched throat. The firelight flickered across my face, now gaunt from hunger and fatigue. I gazed into the distance, past the misty trees, wondering if Chung had eaten anything today. His image flashed in my mind, his kind eyes and the smile from better days. I paused, the spoon hovering midair, my chest tightening with longing for him. The noodles cooled in the pot, but I barely noticed, lost in thoughts of him. The fire continued to burn, its faint glow unable to warm the coldness growing inside me. I set the pot down, hugged my knees, my worry for Chung mingling with my own loneliness. Chung woke up as the sun hung high in the sky, its blinding light streaming through the cracked window. The pain from last night still lingered, aching in every bruise across his shoulders and back with each movement. He lay there for a moment, breathing heavily, his tired eyes tracing the cobwebs on the ceiling. But then he clenched his teeth, pushing himself up with his hands, determined not to sink into despair. His legs trembled as he shuffled out of the house, each step dragging as if tethered to a heavy stone. The village road was thick with dust, the scorching sun beating down, soaking his thin shirt with sweat. He knocked on doors one by one, his hoarse voice asking if anyone needed help with odd jobs. The first person shook their head, their gaze cold, and slammed the door in his face. The second glanced at him with pity but turned him away, saying there was no work. He stood in the middle of the road, fists clenched, his heart sinking under the weight of everyone's indifference. At the same time, I finished my bowl of instant noodles, the lingering spice still tingling on my lips, the pot's warmth still rising to my face. I set the pot on the ground and stood up, the temporary fullness easing my hunger for now. I grabbed the small knife, tucking it into my waistband, and headed up to the forest to gather palm branches. The steep path was rocky, and I walked slowly, my calloused bare feet pressing into the dry earth. The palm trees came into view, their wide fronds spreading out like giant umbrellas casting shade. I picked a sturdy palm tree and swung my knife, chopping at the branches, the sharp thwack echoing through the quiet forest. The leaves fell, releasing a fresh, resinous scent that clung stickily to my hands. I cut a few more branches, sweat rolling down my forehead, stinging my eyes. The palm fronds were heavy, and I dragged them back to the shelter, my steps unsteady on the uneven trail. When I reached the shelter, I dropped the load with a huff, dust swirling around my feet. I set to work reinforcing the shelter, layering the palm leaves over each other to seal the gaps in the roof. The mountain breeze blew through, rustling the fronds, forming a sturdier barrier than before. I tied the branches down with vines, my rough hands scraping against the coarse bark. When I finished, I sat down in front of the shelter, sweat still dripping from my face, my hands resting on my knees. I gazed into the distance, beyond the misty mountains, my heart heavy as I thought about this life. The days of wandering and hunger played vividly in my mind, with no clue what tomorrow might bring. Then Chung's image appeared, his gentle smile and warm eyes from better times. I wondered where he was now, whether he was struggling to survive like me. The longing for him surged, mixed with worry, tightening my chest with every beat of me. The fire in front of the shelter had died down, leaving only a few glowing embers in the ashes. I hugged my knees, sitting motionless, my eyes lost in the endless void ahead. The wind whistled through the gaps in the leaves, carrying a chill that seeped into my skin. This harsh life seemed to offer no way out, just me and the persistent ache of missing Chung. I sighed, my breath blending into the cold mountain air, my heart as heavy as a stone.